Welcome to Pyrography Made Easy. I'm Brenda. In this tutorial episode, I am going to explain some of the textures that I created on my steampunk clock artwork. The artwork is not finished yet, but I thought some of these textures that I've come up with might be helpful in a project you're doing. Well, let's get started. The textures I will be covering in this video rely heavily on circular motion. Let's begin by explaining what circular motion is. Circular motion is simply burning a continuous chain of circular shapes. Open circular motion is where the underlying surface shows through here and there. Closed circular motion means that none of the underlying surface shows through. Clock face. To create the aged look on the clock face, I begin by burning closed circular motion along the edges of the clock. I am using the front of the shader for this. That means I'm holding the pin tip at a slight angle so that just the top 1/3 of the pin tip is in contact with the wood. This produces a smaller burn result, and when combined with my hand speed, a darker tan color is created. After the edge is darkened up, I extend the color further inward on the clock face. I have increased my hand speed so that the burn results are lighter in color. Also, I use a slightly open circular motion. This allows little gaps to start forming here and there, and that further helps to lighten the color and make it more irregular in appearance. Afterwards, add a few darker patches of circular motion here and there. Make sure to keep the patches irregular in shape. Also, keep their placement on the clock face random. Because I want the clock face to be fairly pale in color, I'm burning at a pretty low heat setting. My burner is set just to the point where I get a light to medium tan color. From there I use reburning and/or adjust my hand speed to alter the darkness of the burn results. As I finish the clock face, you can see that the entire surface has a layer of circular motion. I wanted to point this out because it's hard to see that detail on the inset photo. The reason is that the adjacent dark ring creates a lot of contrast. My camera tends to wash out or lose some of the lighter colors when that happens. Outer ring. The outer ring was created using closed circular motion. I am using the flat of the shader as I work. I keep reburning over the area until the color is as dark as I want it. I have increased the heat setting on my burner just a little bit from where it was at when I was working on the clock face. Now the heat is set to get a medium to dark tan burn result. Like before, I use reburning and/or adjust my hand speed to alter the darkness of the burn results. As I burn the closed circular motion, I make sure to incorporate some color variations as I'm burning, but I'm not using an extreme color variation. Instead, the colors are within 3 to 4 shades of each other. You probably noticed that I'm using a different shader than what I was using on the clock face. This shader is smaller. This area isn't very large, and there are things I need to avoid burning over. The smaller shader makes it easier for me to work in this area. That said, you can use any shader. Use what feels comfortable for you. I generally apply a base layer of circular motion. Then I reburn over the area to darken it up. As I reburn, I make sure that the overall color of the area I'm burning matches the areas on the outer ring that I've already burned in. After the overall color matches, then I add a few darker patches of circular motion here and there for texture. When I add the darker patches, I often incorporate some open circular motion in my burn strokes. I don't have anything more to say about this texture, so I will end this chapter. Inner ring. The inner ring is a two-step process. It begins by burning a base layer of color onto the ring that doesn't have a lot of color variation in it. I am mostly using uniform strokes as my burn method, but I also use some circular motion. Before I continue, I need to warn you that I didn't record very much of the base layer being burned in. Uniform strokes is nothing more than burning in a very controlled fashion so that the color is the same throughout the entire burn stroke. Where space allows, I use the flat of the shader to get as wide of a burn stroke as possible. This mostly happens when I'm pulling the pen tip down towards myself. If I'm burning in a more horizontal direction, I tend to hold the pen tip at an angle. This uses just the tip of the shader and produces a much narrower burn stroke. I'm not doing this intentionally. I think it's just one of the ways that I hold the pen tip when I'm burning in this direction. You may or may not experience the same thing. To get smoother looking burn results, I slightly overlap the burn strokes. I also reburn over the area a time or two. Reburning not only darkens the area, but it really helps make the color look smoother. Here's how the inner ring looked after I was done with the base color. As you can see, the color is not uniform. Once the base layer of color is done, then I used a writer pen tip and burned open circular motion over the inner ring. In some areas, I added a lot of circular motion to create irregular dark patches. This is very similar to what was done with the clock face. The major difference is that I'm using a writer pen tip instead of a shader, and I'm burning darker. If you prefer, use a ball pen tip instead of a writer pen tip. Ball pen tips tend to glide over the wood surface better than writers do, but for some reason I'm not very comfortable using ball pen tips. I feel like I never know exactly where I'm going to be burning with it. This problem is due to lack of experience. Don't let my phobia of ball pen tips prevent you from using them. The most important thing you can do as a pyrography artist is use what feels most comfortable to you. When burning the circular motion, it is important to keep the burn stroke direction random. Don't burn long parallel rows of circular motion. That will not create the texture seen in the video. Instead, burn a few chained circles in one direction and then change the direction you are burning. Also, lift the pen tip up and away from the board and change the location of where you are burning. These two things will help keep the texture very random looking. That randomness is a major feature of this texture. In fact, that randomness is a major feature of all of the textures in this video. I've run out of things to say about this texture, so I am ending this chapter. Crescent. The texture on the crescent is a three-part process. The first step in that process is to burn a layer of closed circular motion over the area. I'm not going to cover the translucent gemstones that are seen on the crescent. The gemstones were created using the exact same process that I used to create raindrops. I have a video on that, and I will put a link to that video in the description below. I am using a very large shader that has a pointed tip on it. Why am I using this particular shader? I have no idea. I must have been using it for something else and was too lazy to change back. That said, keep in mind any shader will work. As you burn, make sure to incorporate some tonal variety into the burn marks. I tend to burn a base layer of circular motion and then start reburning to incorporate more variety by adding little patches of slightly darker circular motion here and there. If you have any objects that you need to avoid burning over, like I do, then rotate the board as needed so that you are using the front or the toe of the shader. This position makes it easier to see exactly where you are burning, and that really helps you avoid areas that you don't want to burn over. Part 2 of the 3-step process is to add a layer of tiny dots over the area. This is also known as stippling. I am using a micro writer pen tip, but any writer or a ball pen tip would work. My dots are a number of shades darker than the base layer of color. This darkens the crescent, and that helps the gemstone stand out. The final step for this texture was to burn open circular motion over the area using the same pen tip that the dots were created with. Keep the loops on the circular motion small. This step did two things. One, it further darkened the crescent so that my translucent gemstone stood out more. And second, it toned down the texture that the dots had created. The final result was a slightly variegated texture. What made this texture stand out from the other ones I created was that it had numerous really small, irregular-shaped pale spots. These spots appeared randomly on the crescent, and I liked how that looked. In retrospect, I am not 100% sure that the base layer of circular motion is needed, especially since my base layer was not very dark. That is something to consider and test out on a piece of scrap. You might be able to replicate this texture just doing the dots and tiny circular motion. Well, that is it for this video. I hope the information was helpful. On my website, Pyrography Made Easy, I have a lot of free tutorials with the patterns and reference photos. I will put a link to my website in the description below. Well, thank you so much for watching my video, and I will see you soon.